We've dealt with the elections. We've dealt with what's going to happen in 2024. Now let's talk a little bit about something that's very close to my heart, which is national security. This is the domain that I operate in. Here's the question that the Prime Minister was asked. You had famously said, this is not an era of war. Apart from Ukraine, the Gaza war and other mini conflicts are raging. India played a deft balancing act through these crises. Is there a Modi way out of this global disorder? And here's what the Prime Minister said in response to India Today's question. He said, and I quote, "I have always believed that honest dialogue and sincere diplomacy in an atmosphere free from fear and coercion should be the preferred path to resolve differences, be it Ukraine or Gaza. Our approach has been guided by this belief. We cannot let terrorists or violence set the agenda. Those who had no role in causing conflicts are often the most affected by them, either directly or indirectly. Giving primacy to diplomacy does not mean that we compromise when it comes to terrorism and territorial sovereignty." We also asked the Prime Minister, what about dealing with our neighbors, especially Pakistan and China? China, of course, the country with which India has a massive military standoff for the 4th year running. The Prime Minister said, and I quote, "The Modi way of dealing with our neighbors is to be constructive and cooperative when required, and equally to be firm and steadfast when needed, both on initiatives and challenges. You can see the difference with the past." So this is, we asked the Prime Minister about, okay, so we'll come to the Prime Minister's way of doing things in the next segment. But let me get Raj Chengappa back in on this because, Raj, national security also very close to your heart. The Prime Minister, giving the very, very relevant examples of how India navigated both the recent Israel-Hamas issue as well as the Ukraine issue from 2 years ago, using them as examples of the Modi way or the India way of navigating, prickly, shape-shifting global international issues at a time when India is seeking international space for itself.
I think he made 3 or 4 significant points in this, and I say very important points. He pushed for dialogue and diplomacy as a key to, and he called it honest and sincere, and free from, terror and concern and fear and coercion. That's what he used, the terms that he used. Now, I think there is something that when he speaks, when he said this is not an era of war, it had a tremendous impact in terms of where India stood on this particular issue. He then nuances this in the second part. If you study it very carefully, he talks about the fact that the diplomacy alone, he's putting into context. It doesn't mean that terrorism and any violation of territorial integrity would be permitted. He said that is not what I'm getting at. That will continue. It is, and that is, I think that very subtle nuance is there. That and he's referring clearly, of course, to China on one side and to Pakistan on the other. That we are not going to enter into diplomacy with you, just because of these factors that I've talked about. I would have discussed Ukraine and also Gaza, but when it comes to our interest, this is what will be guiding it. And I think he also made a very interesting point when he talked about neighbors. He didn't want to name names in the interview, though we had actually specifically asked him about
Pakistan and China.
And I think the words he used was firm stand.
Yeah.
And that policy is being played out right now. The focus, I think, of his is that if you're not going to do the kind of, I am willing to be open, as we saw in the first term of Prime Minister Modi, where he did go across to Lahore, try to build relations with Pakistan. China, he spent a lot of time investing and, meeting Xi Jinping.
Yes.
But if you're not going to go down that path, we will be firm about it. And I think the focus, he's not going to say it directly to us, is to build our strength.
Yes.
And not just military strength. He also understands that, we are not building a war machine. We defend ourselves on this, but to ensure that, we speak from a position of strength, both economic and military. That, I think, is the path he's indicating, though he may not have specifically said that in this interview.